Smartphone from Los Angeles Thinkers Ultimate News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mangrove, South Florida, and today's date is Friday, June 8th, 2018. Yes, I decided to put a different track on here, which is by a person entitled TeknoAXE, and the song is called Opposition to It All. And I will always put that link on there as music credits, and all the stuff is royalty free, but always put that on my footnotes so everyone can check it out, donate, support, etc. Yeah, so it was some roast news on one of the people that was famous, Anthony Bourdain, it's called, died today, or earlier, yesterday, at 61, Anthony Bourdain. And one of those areas, I never really watched his shows, to be honest, but I have to say, he had a little brief interview, a cool little interview with Harley Flanagan from TeknoAXE. And he was never a TeknoAXE fan. However, you do recall on, sorry about that, the Stimulators. That was Harley Flanagan's early band when he was like 9 years old. And it said here he was, his death was caused by suicide. It happened somewhere in France. And it's a real shame. But one of the areas you have to look at on his death, sometimes there'd be some questions, because I know there's some claims as well that Asia Argentino, his lifelong girlfriend, is challenging Harvey Weinstein on claims of sexual advancements, of harassment, and all that stuff. And we all know, too, that's a big question. And I'm not here pointing the finger as a whole. No, it's a bright line train coming by. However, so there's a claim on that, because even though Harvey Weinstein's innocent to proven guilty, but the message is coming out, something's really wrong in Hollywood. It's been happening for a very long time. So that could be, some people may say, hey, he may have been murdered. So I'm not jumping the gun, but anything is possible. Another thing you have to look at, too, is from the CNN link here on Tony Bourdain, and he was talking about suicide. It's been climbing in the United States. Been climbing in the United States pretty high. It's like it says here, as according to the U.S. Center for Disease Control Prevention Survey on Thursday, showing suicide rates increased by 25% across the United States over nearly 2 decades, ending in 2016. 25 states experienced a rise in suicide rate by more than 30%, the government report finds. Of course, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, you can contact at 1-800-273-8255, excuse me. Another thing to look at as well is, was Mr. Bourdain on any form of psychotropic drugs that led him to this disturbing day? Well, one of the areas I question too in good faith. So I'm not going to jump the gun, but anything is possible. This is why I'm always observant in these areas. Like you see, there was one on Chris Cornell when he hung himself, and there was talked about he was on psychotropic drugs as well, and there was even a rumor too on a possible claim he was murdered. It's like his last concert was in Detroit, so was Prince. I could be. Hopefully I'm not mistaken, but if anyone can correct me, please send it to me if Prince's last concert before his death was in Detroit, Michigan. Let's give you those couple of examples. And just let you folks know out there, you're controlling your own destiny. Not being judgmental towards Mr. Bourdain or anyone else. Have members of my family happen to them as well. distorted thoughts. Famous athletes too. Even with the Pittsburgh Steelers, just to give you an example, committed suicide and distorted with the brain concussions and so forth by playing. Just to give you those examples. It was very disheartening when folks get into these situations. And anyone that has this mindset, conquer it. I have a big question for Big Pharma. Excuse me, the politicians, whether it's federal, state, or local, being funded by these empire or cartel, pharmaceutical cartel. How can we not take any initiative on questioning this? Those are the areas I have an issue with. May his soul be forever free, and hopefully the truth will come out. And that's one that we could talk about on Anthony Bourdain. Because originally I was going to talk about, mainly address what's going on in Texas, which I'm going to do right now. But I'm going to add that, be a footnote on there so you folks can read it yourselves about Bourdain. It's from CNN. I got this yesterday from the 10th Amendment Center, and I thank them for that. It says here, Texas Bullion Depository opens for business. It's by Michael McHarry. And as it reads here, the Texas Depository officially opened for business this week. The creation of the facility represents a power shift away from the federal government and sets the foundation to undermine the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money. In June 2015, Governor Greg Abbott signed legislation creating the state gold bullion and precious metal depository. The facility will not only provide a secure place for individuals, business, cities, counties, government agencies, and even other countries to store gold and other precious metals. The law also creates a mechanism to facilitate the everyday use of gold and silver in transactions. In short, a person will eventually be able to deposit gold or silver and pay other people throughout electronic means or checks in sound money. The facility began accepting deposits of precious metals on Wednesday, June 6th. Texas Comptroller Glenn Hager became the first depositor. He praised the depository as a secure place to store gold and silver. Once you made that deposit, it's going to be there tomorrow and in the future until you make a decision to withdraw it or you want to sell it, he told the Texas Tribune. Representative Giovanni Carbiglione sponsored the legislation creating the depository. He also deposited gold on Wednesday. He said he thinks the Texas facility could be the first of many across the U.S. I can't think of any place in the world that would create a bullion depository this way. I've heard from legislators across the country who want to do what we are going from Tennessee to Utah. He said in a statement, "We will see a lot of financial interest in this depository with gold and silver and other commodities coming here." Austin-based Lone Star Tangible Assets runs a depository for the state. It currently operates out of its existing facility in Austin, but plans to open a new building for the depository in Lender sometime in 2019. You don't have to be a Texas resident to use the depository. Any U.S. citizen can set up an account online and then ship or personally deliver the metal to the facility. The Texas Bullion Depository accepts gold, silver, platinum, rhodium, and palladium. The depository does not currently have a system in place to facilitate everyday transactions with gold and silver, but remains part of the long-term plan. According to an article in the Star Telegram, state officials want a facility with an e-commerce component that provides for secure physical storage of bullion. While in a development phase, officials said plans for the depository will include online services and would let customers accept transfer and withdraw bullion deposits and related fees. Ultimately, depositors will be able to use a bullion-funded debit card that seamlessly converts gold and silver to fiat currency in the background. This will enable them to make an instant purchases whenever gold and debit cards are accepted, by making gold and silver available for regular daily transactions. The general public, the new depository has new potential for far wide-reaching effect. Professor William Green is an expert on constitutional tender and said in a paper for the Mises Institute that when people in multiple states actually start using gold and silver instead of Federal Reserve notes, it will effectively nullify the Federal Reserve and end the federal government's monopoly on money. Over time, as residents of the state use both Federal Reserve notes and silver and gold coins, the fact that coins hold their value more than Federal Reserve notes will lead to a Gresham's law effect, where good money, gold and silver coins, will drive out bad money, Federal Reserve notes. As this happens, a cascade of events can begin to occur, including a flow of real wealth toward the state's treasury and influx of banking business from outside the state, as people in other states carry out their desire to bank with sound money, and the eventual outcry against the use of Federal Reserve notes for any transactions. Gresham's law hold that bad money drives out good. For example, when the U.S. government replaced silver quarters and dimes with coins made primarily of less valuable copper, the cheap coins drove the silver out of circulation. People hoarded the more valuable silver coins and spent the less valuable copper money. So, how do you reverse Gresham? The key is making it easier to use gold and silver in everyday transactions. The reason bad money drives out good is that governments put up barriers to use sound money in day-to-day life. That makes it more costly to spend gold and silver and incentivizes hoarding. When you remove barriers, you level the playing field and allow gold and silver to compete head-to-head with the Federal Reserve notes. On an even playing field, gold and silver beat fiat money every time. The Texas Bullion Depository also created an avenue toward financial independence. Countries around the world, including China, Russia, and Turkey, have been buying gold to limit their dependence on the U.S. dollar. University of Houston political science professor Brandon Rottinghouse said a state depository can serve a similar function for Texas. There is another in a long line ways to make Texas more self-reliant and less tethered to the federal government. The federal impact is small, but the political impact is telling. Many conservatives are interested in returning to the gold standard and circumvent the Federal Reserve in whatever small way they can. The Texas Bullion Depository will create a mechanism to challenge the federal government's monopoly on money and provide a blueprint for other states to follow. As the majority of states control their own supply of gold, the group began using precious metals in daily transactions. It could conceivably make the Federal Reserve completely irrelevant. I am hicking up, and I do apologize, but I am very pleased to really read this, because I know it was talked about. I read about this 3 years ago, but a New American had addressed this legislation, and I'm very happy this is occurring. Is it going to be perfect? Not yet. Everything's trial and error, but you got to think of long view, long term. And according to Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, the states can produce their own money as well, gold and silver coins. So there's no excuses. You should ask your governors, your legislators in your state, what are you going to do? You have sometimes a lot of people don't even know about the Federal Reserve, how illegal it is. You teach them. You don't get mad. You teach. If they start lying, then it's a whole different ballgame. But throw that bone of knowledge to them. Those are one of the areas. And one thing is, I believe, sound money can prevail. So it's going to happen overnight? Absolutely not. But one thing for sure, you got to be vigilant when it comes to our money situation. Why should our funds be printed out of thin air? Many countries have gotten bamboozled by it. Argentina, Zimbabwe, and even the Weimar Republic of Germany, just to give you a few examples. If you remember, I talked about this all the time on the fall of the Reichsmark. Don't be shy. Look it up. That's how Hitler got into power, or the Third Reich, the Nazis. So look at, correct? Absolutely. And so, speaking of sound money, that's my main focus is right now. And here's another one came from the 10th Amendment Center. There'll be another article after that, the 10th Amendment Center. And who wrote this? Stan Gleason. Stan Gleason wrote this one. It says here, states are knocking down gold and silver barriers. Yeah. How you doing? And it says here, in 2017, Arizona, Louisiana, Virginia, Texas, and North Carolina, and even Minnesota made progress on sound money front. In 2018, other states could do as well. 36 states have already removed sales taxes from precious metal transactions, and bills being introduced this year by sound money advocates in Alabama and Tennessee could add to the list. Both Utah, Oklahoma have already passed legal tender laws recognizing gold and silver as money. The monetary metals can be used freely as a means of payment. Meanwhile, a new Wyoming bill next month would repeal both sales and income taxes on bullion while affirming gold and silver as legal tender and strengthening gold clause contracts. Other states, including Arizona and Idaho, have moved forward on legislation to exempt gold and silver bullion from capital gains taxes. Last year, a bill to eliminate capital gains tax on precious metals passed the Idaho House. Money Metal Exchange President Stephen Gleason testified before the House Committee on Revenue and Taxation, and here's some of what he had to say. Our mission is to educate people about precious metals and help them diversify into this reliable and more stable form of money. Really a truly constitutional money with tremendous history going back to the founding of our country. Gold and silver has been chosen for thousands of years as money because of their qualities as financial insurance. As a store of value, it is particularly as a medium of exchange. The bill I won't talk about today is a straightforward bill. Basically, we don't want to tax money in Idaho. Idaho already does not tax precious metals with the sales tax, and we're asking for it to be removed from the calculation of income tax in Idaho. The founder of our nation dealt with the collapse of an unbacked continental dollar, and that was fresh in their minds when they created our monetary system and established gold and silver as our nation's money. If I remember, that was because was the food riots during the Revolutionary War. In fact, the dollar was defined as a fixed amount of silver, and even in the Constitution, the founders restricted states from making payment in anything other than gold and silver coins for payment for debt. For the first 100 years, our nation's money, gold and silver coinage, maintained its purchasing power pretty much consistently, except for a small period of time during the Civil War. I call it the War for Southern Independence, when we went off the gold standard. But then, it's about 100 years ago the Federal Reserve was created, and since that time, we've seen a dramatic decline in the purchasing power of what is now considered the dollar. But really is called the Federal Reserve note. Of course, the last link to gold was severed officially in 1971, and that has led to an acceleration of its devaluation in purchasing power and explosion in federal government debt during that same period of time. The people that are most harmed by inflation are wage earners and savers. When the dollar goes down in purchasing power, they lose. Fortunately, an increasing number of citizens are recognizing that owning gold and silver as an alternative form of savings is a good way of protecting some of their wealth, protecting some of their purchasing power, and standing against this ongoing devaluation is also something that helps in period of financial turmoil, which seems to be increasing under our current system. Gold and silver are safe haven. Under current law, however, when the taxpayer sells their precious metals, they may end up with a capital gain because it measures against the Federal Reserve notes that they sell for it. Now, it may not be a real gain in most cases. It is not a real gain. It's nominal gain. It's an illusionary gain. Yet this, hold on here, whoops. Yet it's still something that triggers taxation at the federal level. And the taxpayer has included that in their money, in their taxable income, if they sold gold and silver bullions or coins. It's even taxed at a discriminatory high 28% rate for long-term capital gains. It is 15 and 20 for other types of assets. Then Idaho, in the calculation of Idaho taxable income, essentially carries forward that income number. And then there's some adjustments that are made on various things according to Ohio statutes to arrive at the Idaho taxable income. This legislation simply would back out of the federal income or loss that somebody reports on precious metals out their Idaho taxable income. This is something that Idaho can do. Obviously, we can't mess with federal tax laws, but Idaho decides what is taxing as income, and we propose with this legislation that precious metals be removed because it's money. Also, weighing on behalf of Idaho's bill to free precious metals from taxation was the executive of a freedom-minded group in the Gem State, Fred Brimbaum. My name is Fred Brimbaum with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and I'm here to speak for the support of this bill. I'll be brief, I think. Mr. Gleason covered just about everything, but I'll make a parallel point. Recently, actually this week, there's a lot of debate about a constitutional amendment about Article 5 convention, which is unnecessary. I'll say that out of respect. I'm not going to reopen that debate. I think it's relevant to some extent to this bill. I certainly don't want to overplay that point. What came at one of the central issues was an unbalanced federal budget, if you will, and the fact that we have accumulated about $20 trillion federal debt, and I think sometimes it's hard to think of inflation we will currently have as inflation. It certainly varies. It has been very significant, say, in gasoline. It is in property, but the potential for inflation is huge because the Federal Reserve has now issued about $4 trillion of digital money into the economy. It is pushed since the recession. So I think what the bill does, in many ways, it is a prospective measure that those folks who either own gold or silver, or may in the future, if we do have a real bout of inflation, this will protect them for that. One of the challenges is in getting this and similar bills passed is educating legislators of why gold and silver, being constitutional money, are different from other asset classes. Some politicians just don't grasp the fundamental distinction. Committee chair question for Mr. Gleason. Representative Gannon. Representative Gannon, thank you, Chairman. Sir, one question I've asked for me is, if we pass this bill, we are picking winners and losers. What about if I invest in a gold stock and make money of my gold stock? Or what about oil companies? If we open the door to a particular kind of investment for a tax break like this, how do I explain to constituents that the particular investments don't get the same kind of tax break? Of course, the chairman goes, Mr. Gleason. Gleason replies, okay, Mr. Chairman, Representative Gammon, it's a good question. The key distinguishing characteristics here is that gold and silver are money. They are not a stock. They are not a piece of property. When it comes to mining stocks and things like that, obviously, that's not covered here. We're not talking about taking away taxation on the exchange of one form of money with another. So people are not, unfortunately, able to deduct the loss that they take when they have Federal Reserve notes and they dramatically decline in their value. There is no deduction for that. The deduction is basically everyone is paying attention, paying the inflation tax. They are not able to recoup that and protect themselves against that. So gold and silver is another alternative form of money. It is actually the more stable, historic form of money, And so that's how I distinguish this. This is about sound money and preserving people's savings and not giving any kind of a special tax break for an investment class. Fortunately, there are politicians who understand, while that are not taxing money in any form in this is a matter of consistency. Idaho State Representative Ron Nate had made a strong case for treating gold and silver as the same as the Federal Reserve notes when it comes to taxation. And this is what he has to say about that. And it gets pretty long here, which, hey, it's, you know what, and that's okay. Almost done. We'll just continue on here. Because Mr. Representative Nate spoke, says, thank you, Chairman. I'm in favor of the motion. This is just an investment. This is a money. This is just an investment. This is a money. And so, Federal Reserve notes are nationally recognized money, but according to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, the only thing that the states can declare money, we can't coin our own money. The only thing we can use as money, we declare silver and gold as money. So the whole thing is, he's right. Article in Section 10, they can declare silver and gold as money. So it is the only real estate money that we control of. And if holding money becomes something that is some subject to taxation, then we have, I think, a preserved incentive in our government here that money they declare, the government declares is legal tender, suddenly becomes a tax instrument for them as well. This makes sense of consistency. If gold and silver coin are money, then we should not tax it when it increases in value. If you argue that we should tax it that when it increases in value, then you should also argue that the Federal Reserve notes, when they diminish in value because of inflation, we ought to be able to declare capital losses on those on our tax forms as well. That has a good point there. But because we don't allow that, we shouldn't be taxing either capital gains or losses on gold and silver coin. This is a matter of consistency with regards to your currency and tax treatment of it. Thank you. Last year, the Arizona State Finance Committee heard testimony from none other than former Congressman Ron Paul. Dr. Paul was the leading voice in the U.S. Congress for sound money issues during his tenure there. He turned once obscure idea of auditing and reforming and ultimately end the Federal Reserve into a national campaign issue. He ran for president in 2008 and 2012, and that's true because I've been always like observe these arrows, heard his rhetoric on it, and it has a lot of merit. So Ron Paul said the following in support of Arizona's ultimately successful bill to eliminate income taxes on gold and silver. And it says right here, it will be legalized competition in the constitutional fashion. It isn't like saying, okay, Arizona want to print their paper currency again, because you're not allowed to do that. On a military issue, states are talked about in the Constitution. They have restrictions. They can't print money, but they also have been told in the Constitution they could only use gold and silver as legal tender. So the responsibility is one of the states to follow the rules, and meant nobody was supposed to use anything other than gold and silver as legal tender. We've had a mess. It's gotten worse. It started in 1913, and there was a climatic end in 1971, but the problems have continued. He's talking about Federal Chairman Arthur Burns, the Nixon administration, took the gold standard away from our dollar. Now look what's happening, right? Now you hear about these ordeals about $15 an hour minimum wage. Hey, something to think about, right? Thank you, fiat money. I will proceed here. If you look at some of those charts, that have been really rocky since 1971. With destruction of the value of the money since 1971, we've lost 95% of the value of the dollar. Believe me, the gold standard was invented as long time ago, from the beginning of recorded history. 5,000 years ago, they used gold and silver. Biblically, gold and silver real weights and measures. That's what they count. That's what they counted by. So this is not brand new. It's the government and the people who are seeking power are always undermining the restraints placed on government by honest money. So I congratulate you for hearing and dealing with this bill, because I think if you do pass this bill, it will be a great step forward for a lot of people to understand money issue and the freedom issue. Thank you very much. And Chairman, thank you very much, Dr. Paul. So we're Gleason Road here. Similar sound money efforts are springing up in other states. Of course, states won't be able to abolish discriminatory federal taxation of precious metals, but state-level reforms will catch the attention of members of the U.S. Congress. Sound money victories at the state level will help build political momentum for sound money legislation at the federal level. Groups such as Sound Money Defense League are advancing the sound money movement by educating the public on the problems of our inflationary monetary system, as well as working with allies in elective office to enact reforms. Setting gold and silver free as competing currencies to the Federal Reserve notes won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but real progress can be made, and it's being made one step at a time. He's absolutely correct. This is why I'm always praise that. And I make my error if I'm mistaken saying that the states can produce money on the gold and silver. I made my mistake. However, the states can use gold and silver as money for transactions, according to Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, and that is fair enough. And this is why I always urge people to buy these precious metals at the best of your ability and save, prepare, and all that, because if the dollar collapses, we got other transactions ready to go. And I know some people may consider Bitcoin the pros and cons. I hear all sides of it, but that's another area. I've never put all your eggs in one basket. But it's always, good to keep those things handy as well. And this is why the Federal Reserve and other central banks are not really too pleased, because things are waking up, and people are waking up, and they're studying the history of these atrocities of economic collapses around the country, other countries, like I said, what I addressed before mentioned. But hey, you just gotta keep on the fight, my friends. Nothing happens overnight. All you gotta do is start teaching. Be the rabbi, be the teacher, enlighten those. You're not here to change people, but inspire them that, hey, you have options. That's what the founding fathers believed. I don't know, they had that foresight. It doesn't matter, we can be here dumb, stagnant, happy, and call for underdog to help us for everything. So I'm gonna continue on here. And I'll do one more related to money. Status report. States take on Fed's money monopoly. And this is actually written by Mike Maharrey again. And it came out August 2nd. We'll get a little history lesson here. Let's continue on here. States continue to pass measures that chip away at the Federal Reserve monopoly by facilitating and encouraging the use of gold and silver. On July 25th, Governor Roy Cooper signed a bill into law exempting the sale of purchase of gold and silver from state sales taxes. The new law removes an important roadblock on the way of their everyday use of money, taking the first step toward breaking the Federal Reserve's money monopoly. With governor's signature, the law went into effect retroactively July 1st, 2017. A month earlier, Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards signed a similar bill into law that went into immediate effect. While repealing state sales tax on precious metals may seem like a relatively small step, it removes one barrier to owning gold and silver and eliminates a penalty on the use of sound money. A new law that goes into effect August 9th eliminates state capital gains taxes on gold and silver specie, removing another barrier. Representative Mark Finchem, Republican from Tucson, sponsored HB 2014. Legislation eliminates states' capital gains taxes on income derived in exchange one of the kind legal tender for another kind of legal tender. The bill defines legal tender as a medium exchange, including specie. It is authorized by the United States Constitution or Congress for the debt of payments, public charges, taxes, and duties. Especially means coins having precious metal content. In effect, passage of HB 2014 legalizing the Constitution. Legalized the Constitution by treating gold and silver as silver specie as money. If you imagine you ask a clerk to break a $5 bill and he charged you a 35-cent tax, silly, right? After you were only exchanged only one form of money for another. Essentially, this is what taxing the sale of gold and silver. As Ron Paul said during testimony in favor of the Arizona bill, we ought not to tax money. And that's a good idea. It makes no sense to tax money. Of course, this is all the good news for gold and silver dealers and investors, but has much broader implications. These bills effectively remove taxes from the exchange of one kind of legal tender for another kind of legal tender. After all, gold and silver are money. In other words, individuals buying gold or silver bullion or utilizing gold and silver in a transaction will no longer be subject to state taxes on the exchange. This should encourage and facilitate the use of gold and silver in everyday transactions. Paul said he considered the Arizona bill to be very important because it also served as an educational effort for other states, but it will also have a practical effect. Passage of HB 2014 in Arizona and efforts in other states to eliminate sales tax, marking first important step toward currency competition. If money gains a foothold in the marketplace against Federal Reserve notes, people will be able to choose the test time stability of gold and silver over the central bank's rapidly depreciating paper currency. Freedom of choice expanded by repealing gold and silver taxes allows residents to secure the purchasing of their money. So that does make a lot of sense here. On another front of the war against the Fed, the tax Bullion Depository took a major step closer to reality in June, which officials formally announced that private vendor that will run a facility. The creation of the state Bullion Depository in Texas represents a power shift away from the federal government to the state. It provides a blueprint that could ultimately end the Fed. Greg Abbott signed legislation creating the state bullion and precious metal depository in June of 2015. The facility will not only provide a secure place for individuals, businesses, cities, counties, government agencies, and even other countries to store gold and silver precious metals and other precious metals. Law also creates a mechanism to facilitate the use of everyday gold and silver in business transactions. In short, a person will be able to deposit gold or silver and pay other people through electronic means or checks. It's sound money. So that's pretty cool. This is an archive, by the way, and we'll continue on here. People are ready to people are already using gold and silver in everyday transactions in Utah, where United Precious Metal Association set up the state's first gold bank, and it offers publicly available accounts denominated in gold and silver dollars in Utah. According to UPMA, in the past year, it has grown to 700% in assets under management and made up 2% of the market for U.S. gold and silver coins. You don't even have to live in Utah to open an account, and an account holder can conduct business in gold and silver with any other account holder across the country. These bullion marks, whether state run or private, can seriously undermine the Fed's monopoly on money. They allow for easy transfer for physical precious metals, meaning everyday people can easy transact business using gold and silver. The option to use silver money can force rapidly depreciating Federal Reserve notes out of the marketplace. The constitutional tender expert Professor William Green, when multiple states actually started using gold and silver instead of Federal Reserve notes, it would effectively nullify the Federal Reserve and the federal government's monopoly on money. Over time, as residents of the state use of both Federal Reserve notes and silver and gold coins, the fact that the coins hold their value more than Federal Reserve notes will lead to reverse Gresham's law effect. With good money, gold and silver coins that drove out bad money. Federal Reserve notes. As this happened, a cascade of events can begin to occur, including the flow of real wealth toward the state's treasury and influx of banking business from outside of the state, as people in other states carry out their desire to bank with sound money, and eventually outcry against the use of Federal Reserve notes for any transactions. During the late legislative session, Utah State Representative Ken Ivory from West Jordan, Republican of West Jordan, introduced a bill to facilitate the operation of gold banks such as UPMA. The bill didn't advance this session, but Ivory set the stage to push the issue for the next year. Ideally, the Utah will pass the bill next session, and other states will follow suit. And I believe it has advanced. Okay, so there's like the foot in the door for the Beehive State, which I think is awesome. I was very pleased to read about that. The explosion in efforts to encourage sound money in states go beyond mere monetary policy and finances, and more broadly about liberty. During an event after this Senate committee testimony in Arizona, Ron Paul pointed out that it's really about the size and scope of government. If you're for less government, you want sound money. The people who want big government, they don't want sound money. They want to deceive you and commit fraud. They want to print money. They want monopoly. They want a monopoly. They want you to get conditioned, as the schools have conditioned us to point out where deficits doesn't matter. These state efforts open the door for a serious pushback against the Fed and its monopoly on money. But state action alone won't accomplish anything. Ultimately, it will be everyday Americans to take advantage of these state laws actually start using gold and silver when possible. This is a perfect opportunity to engage in acts of individual notification. Without individual action, the politics really won't matter. The bottom line is up to us. And he's absolutely right. This is an archive, by the way, too, so let you folks know. And and it's, I'll put all this on my footnotes. You guys can read it for yourselves. And I am very pleased to say, yes, it is good that states are starting to do these things on sound money, gold, silver coins, and let the Federal Reserve know you are illegal, null and void, and anyone that still wants to pursue that or say they're legit and say what they're doing is wrong with sound money is considered treasonous. I dare call it treason. Plain and simple. And all those individuals that are federal chairmen should be charged for that particular seriously high crime. And this is why I remember in the past when I used to hear all these presidential candidates, Joe Bachman and flip-flop Mitt Romney, talking about the Federal Reserve, they get a little bit semi-defensive about them. You know what? Start doing your homework or stop lying. I'm sick of you parasites out there saying the Federal Reserve should exist. It should be null and void. We still gotta be vigilant too, regardless. If they're done, doesn't mean we should all just celebrate. It's another battle. Because you're always gonna have some sneaky parasites out there who's trying to manipulate, saying about trying to use our sound money for their personal gain. So, like I said, my friends, I'm happy about these Texas Bullion and all these states are getting involved on using gold and silver as transactions. That's great, but we're always gonna keep them on their toes as well. And I always say that in good faith. So that is it on this particular subject. And I'm going to do a little check here. Actually, I like going through some of the links. And this one here came from BearingArms.com. It says here, Texas student group stands to oppose Parkland kids. And this is came out yesterday afternoon by Tom Knighton. It says here, ever since the Parkland massacre, there have been a few names we just can't seem to escape. Names like David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez are becoming almost household names, all because they went to a school where something terrible happened. Through it all, the Parkland kids have pretended to be the voices of the whole generation, claiming that the young are somehow ready to throw off supposedly antiquated ideas like rights and make the world better. As if Luckily, though, there is another group of young people, also from part of the country, touched by recent school violence that is ready to oppose Hogg and company. A group of pro-gun Texas students is challenging Parkland survivors in their attempt to push gun control after the Santa Fe high school shooting last month. The group, called March for Our Rights, interesting, I'm going to have to check them out, sent a letter to Governor Greg Abbott urging him to consider his pro-Second Amendment viewpoint. The letter came in response to another letter sent to Abbott and signed by organizers of the pro-gun control group March for Our Lives, which, to let you know, folks know once again, they are organized by CA Corporation out of Plantation, Florida. That's a fact. The New American did that, and you can look it up, and there's the links, and they can back up their article. Well, I'll continue on here. The letter published as a full-page ad in the Houston Chronicle called for policy change and asked Abbott not to pander to the gun lobby. Oh, but we're going to teach you how to wipe your rear end too. We're young people. We're part of the Children of Corn. We worship Pol Pot. We support the Children of Khmer Rouge. I'll continue on here. March for Our Rights said that while it didn't have money to take an ad out, it wanted Abbott to know it supported the Second Amendment. We want to make sure you know we don't agree with billionaire Michael Bloomberg or any of the gun control organizations and activities that he financially supports. A Bloomberg affiliate group recently took an ad out in the Houston Chronicle criticizing you and Texas lawmakers for supporting pro-Second Amendment policies and rejecting their misguided gun control schemes. While we might lack the ability to finance a similar response, we do have a voice. The group that the letter referred to was a viewpoint, was a nonprofit, Everytown, which received financial backing from Bloomberg. This group is also going toe-to-toe with Hogg and his fellow travelers on social media, and also pointing out that unlike the Parkland crowd, no one has written a big old AstroTurf check. In other words, they're legitimately homegrown. Just the existence this group is important. I'm in my mid-40s. It's easy for people to dismiss my opinions on the Parkland kids as being some variation of get off my lawn. In fairness, there are times that part of my criticism of them may sound that way. Part of it is because I have experienced these kids don't. That said, it's easy for both them and their followers to ignore me. But this is their peers who are opposing them. These are the people of their same generation, and they're making it clear that the Parkland crowd don't speak for them. They understand our rights are sacred and shouldn't be traded cheaply, especially when we have so much evidence that none of the measures being called for will do anything. It also warms my heart to know that the upcoming generation isn't going to be led by foul-mouthed leaders of anti-rights AstroTurf group, but by people who aren't necessarily going to capitulate with their peers simply because someone has been on television enough. And I agree completely. I'm going to tell everyone out there, you learn from the past is today's greatest teacher. You have to have the knowledge to back up facts rather than pretentious rhetoric. And that's why I've been talking about some of these shootings, because a lot of them occurred in firearms reserve. They have breached. A lot of those laws haven't been implemented. Federal, state, and local levels. You go to my archives, you can read it for yourselves. I have talked about this multiple times. And like I always say before, you gotta always look at the bigger picture. Are the police are obligated to protect you as an individual? Absolutely not. Not under the state's Sovereign Immunity and Tort Liability Act, which Florida, Texas, many others have these things. All you gotta do is look it up. I posted the stuff on the past episodes. I don't really need to repeat it. Just do your homework, please. If you got something else, send it to me. Don't be shy. So this is what I say to folks. When you have a bunch of people out there they believe they're celebrities, you can be swindled, you can be goofed, you can be victims of the propaganda's playbook by Benes. Don't fall for the Orwellian echo chamber. It will bite you in the rear end when least expected. But for the kids who are involved for March for Our Rights, I salute you. And that is it. Ooh, one more thing here. My mistake. Got one more thing. One of the questions for March for Our Lives. Explain to me how homicide rates are plummeting from 1990 to 2016. It has been going down dramatically. Something to really look at. You can look up this link and make your own judgment. Now, that is it. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you may send something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with the corner. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network. If they do need support, please donate money the best you can for this small group. Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/lookalike 3 with 3 eyes. If you want to be a patron, donor, supporter, I would thank you in advance. In addition, you hit me at Gab, which is a freer speech version of Twitter, yours.org, oneway.org, and buddylist.co. In addition, you can email me at lookyluck3@gmail.com or to encrypted one, especially with the Proton Mail account, lookyluck03@protonmail.com. Alright, my friends, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. May your guardian spirits be with you.